Canada is the only country in the OECD without any transportation policy. So, we shouldn't be surprised that therefore we have a country where there's inadequate mass transit within most cities and towns. There's a complete absence of bus service in most rural areas, which isn't the case in much of the rest of the world. We should make those links work. We should build high-speed rail from coast to coast. We should make sure that VIA reaches and that we have electric trains, light rail, all those things. And for personal transportation vehicles, the internal combustion engine is simply going to go extinct. So whether it's going to be electric cars or whether it's going to be through hydrogen as a fuel, through a whole range of things. I think my current fantasy, which I don't think is far off, is that if we don't do something in Canada to actually manufacture cars that people are going to want to buy, that are actually very, very low in CO2 emissions, in other words, not internal combustion engines. I don't know how many of you know that China just put $600 billion into green technology. I figure China's plan is to sell us our cars at Walmart soon. Small electric vehicles that will get people around for cheap, and there'll be technologies that are light years ahead of Canada because we bailed out GM and we didn't insist they change.
I'd like to add to that suite of personal vehicles, human-powered vehicles, aka bicycles, and certainly they're the future.
And so we need, again, in terms of transportation policy, we need bike lanes, intermodal transportation links, so you can put your bike on the bus, put your bike on the light rail, put your bike on the train, and come out and cycle all the beautiful areas of Canada that are in, get to wilderness areas by train and bring your bike. That's the kind of world we should be having. I don't know that you find any politicians who want to explain the science of climate change for 40 minutes, but I take your point. I didn't put enough time into solutions. Our policies focus on basically the reality that we have to do everything. You have to throw everything you have at this problem. There's no one policy solution that gets us where we need to go. Our framework is to start with carbon taxes, $50 a ton going up to $100, going up to $150 as we ramp out the greenhouse gases as part of our tax base. We need to raise the price. At the same time, that revenue would be used to reduce income taxes, reduce payroll taxes. We'd also have a program in retrofitting all the buildings across the country, as I referenced. We'd have a program in mass transit that included high-speed rail across Canada, improving via rail, and committed money to municipalities to bring in mass transit, recreational areas, bike paths, and also retrofitting all our waterworks, because all our waterworks were built for a different climate too, and I haven't even started talking about how hydrology changes during climate change. But one effect I'm sure you've all noticed is that warmer atmosphere holds more moisture than colder atmosphere, so we're getting lots more deluge events where the streets are flooded fast, sewers are flooded fast. That's because of climate change, and our sewer systems and our waterworks were not built for that, so we have to rebuild all of those. Other aspects of our program include a real focus on incentives to renewables, particularly accelerated capital cost allowances for wind, solar, geothermal, tidal, and for promoting district energy cogeneration. And on top of that, that we would not convey any money to provinces unless they also ramped up the things within their jurisdiction, because a lot is provincial. So building codes which are provincial, ensuring that money is tied and conditional to the fact that they are also in the provinces moving towards a reduced greenhouse gas. And we would, of course, put a moratorium on expansion of the tar sands. So there are probably another, Adriana, 50, 60 measures that I haven't touched on, but that gives you a sense of because we basically know one thing is going to do it. We need to try absolutely everything, and we need to create real incentives to Canadians to go forward with the retrofits in our own lives, our homes, avoiding using a car, all those things that may cost us more. Our new appliance, we need to have appliance regs, I forgot to mention. We still sell appliances in Canada that would be illegal in the US because they waste so much energy. So we need to ramp up our regulations so that we don't sell to, people go in and buy a refrigerator, they look for the cheapest one. It's not really cheap if it's going to cost you that much in electricity every month. So there's a whole range of measures that we need to do right away. Pembina report, and why was it attacked? By the way, it was funded by, TD Bank. Don Drummond, who's the senior economist at TD Bank, he used to be the finance deputy minister for Canada. Very solid guy, continues to advocate for a carbon tax. Did so within a week of the last federal election when people were saying, see, no one in Canada wants a carbon tax because Dion lost. Well, I don't regard the last election as a referendum on carbon taxes. In any case, Drummond and TD Bank funded this. The numbers were crunched by Mark Jacquard and Associates. Actually, this is the paper I have with me. Why was it attacked? But because it's solid. It was attacked because what it does is put some numbers in front of people, and it says that the current Harper government target, which for those of you who don't know, is 20% below 2006 levels, when everyone else uses a base year of 1990, by 2020. That works out to 3% below 1990 by 2020. So it's appalling and weak, but this study, using the best and most robust modeling and projections and feeding everything into the system, found that on the current plans the Harper government has put in place, they have no hope of meeting that target either. That shouldn't surprise any of us, but it's worth noting that when Jim Prentice says this report was dangerous, I think the response is, okay, table your numbers. We can look at both and figure out who's telling the truth, because this report is solid. The one thing this report could have done better, in my view, is to have included things like Ontario is phasing up coal. It did not take into account into its methodology things that were being done at the policy level by other levels of government, sub-national levels of government. And the Globe attacked it, Prentice attacked it, everyone said it was dangerous and irresponsible because they didn't want Canadians to grab onto it and say that's what we want. We want 20% below 1990 levels by 2020 because we've just seen the GDP will continue to grow, we'll have more jobs, and although we will have less economic growth by less than 4%, by the year 2020, this report says that even going for 20% below 1990 levels by 2020, we will experience a slight slowing in growth of the GDP that by the year 2020 would be less than a 4% reduction on the otherwise 20% growth that we were expecting. Which takes me right into the next question. We need to have a recognition, as Peter Victor has put it, we need a steady state economy. His book is Steady State Economy by Disaster or Design. Let's do it by design and recognize that we can expand employment, have more steady and healthy economies without making the goal of all economic activity economic growth. And yes, there are already climate refugees, but nothing like what we're going to see. There are 40 million people living in Bangladesh within 1 meter of sea level, and that's just Bangladesh. We are going to have, if we don't act, this is why one of the main reasons that it will also be a security issue is that geopolitical instability created by hundreds of millions of environmental refugees is beyond anything we've experienced. In terms of sustainability, and Vandana Shiva and lots of great people around the world looking at it, sustainability must meet a couple of circumstances. One is I don't think it can be sustainable if it's not fair, so equity issues, human rights, and social justice play a role in this, and making sure we live within the carrying capacity of our base, which means, of course, we have to start looking at steady state economies. I'm happy with, there are about 5 different definitions in the Brundtland report, only one keeps getting used, but it basically means we live in a way that protects the existence of other species, other ecosystems, and all we can do as humanity is not manage ecosystems. We just have to manage the way we behave so we don't kill off where we live and kill off the other species on the planet with us. Yes, our government is guilty of sabotage. And yes, there are all kinds of aspects of that behavior that one could consider criminal, but there are no consequences for politicians who act in this way, except at the ballot box, which gets back to my point that we have to vote. What we can do locally for bringing about the changes we need in reducing waste, in improving mass transit, in having our bike paths, in delivering the kind of greening of the city that hasn't been imagined since Jane Jacobs spoke of it. And if we could do that, we could do a lot for this city, which of course is where most Canadians, it's the biggest, most populous city in the country, and it had led the way since June 1988, being the first city in Canada to adopt a strong target. But adopting targets isn't enough. We really need to green the whole city and ensure that, that we all know that in our current time, good point, we make a healthier world immediately. And for future generations, we ensure that there will be people to write about what we did at this time. Right? We want to make sure that the changes we make, that our grandchildren can look back and say, that was a turning point. 2009, that Copenhagen meeting, that was a turning point. The way we now look back at 20 years ago when the Berlin Wall fell, say, yes, we didn't know it at the time, but Copenhagen turned out to be our turning point away from the abyss. Thank you.